Hello, everyone. This is Sean from the Soccernostalgia blog. I have the pleasure to interview Spanish economist and former Catalan city councilor, Mr. Carles Lozano. Mr. Lozano is a member of CIHEFE, el Centro de Investigaciones de Historia y Estadística del Fútbol Español, the Spanish Center of Investigations of Football History. Mr. Lozano has appeared multiple times on a podcast discussing Spanish football history. This interview is separate from the podcast series. This video interview will serve as a companion piece to a written blog presentation on the kidnapping of FC Barcelona striker Enrique Castro Gonzalez Quini in 1981. Hello, Carles. It was a pleasure.
How are you? Thank you. Good morning for you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just about all Spanish football historians are aware of Enrique Castro Gonzalez Quini, a legend of Sporting Gijón in the 1970s and 80s. Can you introduce him and his trajectory?
Yes, he is a very popular forward in Spanish football in the 70s, particularly because of his sporting merits, but because also of his personality, who was really kindly and lovely for everybody around him. In the sporting side, he began in a tiny Asturian team in Ensidesa, and from there he got to Sporting de Gijón. Sporting de Gijón was in the around 1970 a second division team. He would lead the transformation of this little club from his second division team, who reaches the first division in his first year, to the second in the league, the run-up in the first division of Spain. Between 1969 and 1980, he is 11 years there, and he is in 3 times the top scorer of the league, playing in a very humble team. As a matter of fact, in one of the years, they got relegated. But he's ever about 15 goals. He reaches 24 in his last season. He is 3 times top scorer in first division, also 2 times top scorer in second division. And he is in that team of Sporting that in 1979 reached the second position of the league, something unthinkable for this team. He plays with Joaquin, with Kundi, with the Argentine Enzo Ferrero. It is a team, the best in the history of the club, and he was the head of the team. He's also in the Spanish national team, but with not so much luck. He plays only 35 matches, around more of 10 years, and he scores 8 goals. He goes to the World Cup with Spain in 1978 and 1982, but is not a regular player in none of them. He is in the Euro 1980 and he scores one of the goals against Belgium. But his presence in the national team really doesn't go as far as it could go because Kubala in the first years was the national team coach and preferred Santillana, the forward of Real Madrid. And in the last years, around the World Cup of 1982, played in Spain, is Trustegui, the forward that plays with the national team. So Quini is the second option, and he didn't play some matches who could be very important with Spain.
His big move is to Barcelona in 1980. And again, it's a successful spell in a team that was chasing the title for nearly a decade. Let's get to the events of 1981. Can you describe Barcelona's position in the league just prior to the kidnapping?
Yes, the rules of the time allowed a club with a good player retain the player. So Sporting retained the player, the Quini, in Asturias for 11 years. Barcelona tried in several occasions to have him. And Barcelona dreamed with Cruyff and Quini playing together. It was finally in 1980, when Quini is 31 years old, when he comes to Barcelona. He arrives here to find Kubala as the coach of Barcelona. And really, the first matches here are not very good. In the 9 first matches, Barcelona is not playing well. Quini scores only 1 goal. And finally, Kubala is sacked, is fired. The new coach will be Elenio Herrera, the mythical coach of Barcelona 20 years before, had led Barcelona to some remarkable titles. And Elenio Herrera comes back. Elenio Herrera coach with Quini, and Quini answers with a lot of goals. In just 20 more matches, Quini plays them all, scoring 17 goals, and Barcelona goes to the second position in the league. Quini scores 2 goals against Real Madrid, a very important match in the league, and Barcelona goes escalating in a very, very strange season of the league. The League 80-81 is probably the most strange in the history of the competition. It was really Atletico Madrid, the team who seemed to have the title, but have 2 bad days at home. A team, Atletico Madrid, that was in the first position, is defeated at home by Betis by 0-4. They retain first position. They would finally not win the league, but we will tell. And when we arrived to the 1st of March of 1981, the day of the Quini is kidnapped, in that very day, Barcelona defeats Hercules by 6-0. Quini scores 2 goals. And in the table, with 8 games to play, Atletico Madrid is the first position and Barcelona in the second. Many people remembers it as Barcelona was in the first position and was going to win the league. Well, it's not accurately. The fact is, Atletico Madrid was in first position. Barcelona was in the second position, and they had to play between them. It was all open, but it's not right to say that Barcelona were going to win that league. The season will be shocked by the fact of the kidnap. Now will take, but will not be stopped. As we'll see, the season will continue in this very bizarre season of the Spanish league, the most in history probably.
Can you walk us through how Quini was kidnapped following Barcelona's match versus Hercules on March 1st?
Well, it was a normal Sunday, the 1st of March. Barcelona played at home at 5 p.m. and Barcelona won 6-0. Quini scored twice. And everything was normal. The family of Quini that weekend was in Asturias, and they had an appointment in the airport of Barcelona at the evening when they came back. But things weren't unexpected. When Quini, who lived in the district of Las Corts in Barcelona, in a simple block, and not a big house, a block of flats in Barcelona, goes to the parking, under the house where is the parking, there are 3 persons waiting for him. They force him into his own car for Granada, and with his car, they kidnapped and taken him away. Nobody sees that at the moment, and they go out of the parking, and we know later they went to Zaragoza, far away. Some time later, the family arrives to the airport, and well, where is my husband? He hasn't come. Some questions that the first time nobody knows, and the day finishes with the suspicions that Quini has had some kind of accident or something has happened to him because he didn't go to look for his family. Is it the next day when we will know that he has been kidnapped? And all the drama, all the tragedy it means for a family, for people, for the clubs, starting with a very long period in which everybody was thinking about this.
Yes. And it appears that his wife, Maria Neves, had called Jose Alessanco to inform him, and I guess he informed the club. Apparently, the kidnappers kidnapped him. They put a black ski mask to cover his head and forced him into his car, and then, like you said, they drove away. So, what were the following days like, and how did the kidnappers make their demands?
Yes, well, the dispositive the next day was a bit precarious. The central of everything was the own house of him, who was full of police, of players of Barcelona. Alexandre was the captain and he had the main role. Alexandre is the past player, had arrived to Barcelona 1 year before, being the most expensive Spanish player in history at that very moment, and he was a charismatic leader of the team. And even President of Barcelona, who was Josep Lluís Núñez, was in that house leading the negotiations. Because the next day, a call show that he's somebody calls and says he's kidnapped, we have him, and if you want him released, you should pay 350 millions of pesetas. For the dollars of that time, it could be around $3 million. It's very money. It's a lot of money. And it starts some bizarre events from those days. As a matter of fact, there are some scene remembered by a journalist, a very famous journalist of the time, José María García, came to Barcelona because everybody wanted to be in first lane, and described that when the kidnappers called, because they called every day practically, was Núñez, the president of Barcelona, who talked with them. And according to this journalist, Núñez tried to negotiate the amount, to negotiate it down until 100 million pesetas. It's also said by Núñez that that not exactly so, that the instructions of police was to have long conversations with the kidnappers, that the matter was not about paying less money for the free of Quini, as well, it was to maintain the conversation so police could know where did the call came from. Well, this was a situation. Journalists telling everything, people in the street, at the door of Quini, everybody thinking about this. Some polemics about the fact of if the money should be paid or not, and it lasted 24 days. It's a lot of time in this situation. 24 days with everybody, with this stress, and with Quini, who was kidnapped, but nobody knew in which situation, about his health, about his condition, and worse, maybe well, everybody was very, very worried about that.
So, can you describe Barcelona's form on the field following the kidnapping?
We got to one terrible thing about this. If one player of the team is Barcelona, who was second position or any other, is kidnapped, how can you force them to play? With the Spanish league is not has not a lot of solidarity between clubs, and we can see it. Federation didn't stop the competition. Not even as adjourned the matches of Barcelona. Maybe, well, you can accept that other teams continue playing. But Barcelona was forced to play. Players didn't want to play. Schuster was pronounced, saying, I cannot play this situation. But Federation forced them to play. 7 days after the kidnapping, there was the decisive match, Atletico Madrid-Barcelona, first and second of the league. Obviously, Barcelona was defeated 1-0. How could they play? The strange is they didn't lose more. Curiosity, the goal was scored by Marcos Alonso, the player of Atletico Madrid, who later would be player of Barcelona, and whose son is playing now at Barcelona.
And himself, he passed away just recently, yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's all a saga because the grandfather of our Marcos Alonso and father of this Marcos Alonso was a player of Real Madrid with Di Stefano. It's really an amazing saga in Spanish football. Well, Barcelona was defeated that day. 1 week later, they had to go to Salamanca. They were defeated also 2-1. And 1 week later, they played at home. You can imagine what was the situation in the stadium. Who can say everything, who can support the team when you know your star player is kidnapped. And Barcelona turned around against Zaragoza 0-0 at Camp Nou, definitely leaves Barcelona very far in the league. So these 3 weeks, the league didn't stop. Barcelona had to play. Players didn't want to play it, and Barcelona scored just 1 goal, and obviously didn't win none of those matches because that was inconceivable.
As far as the public, what was the reaction, not just in Barcelona, but throughout the country?
There was solidarity. Obviously, more in Barcelona and in Asturias. some symbolic facts, but well, it could be more. Maybe yes, maybe forcing to respect of stopping the competition would have shown more of the solidarity. But people were really amazed and impressed by the fact. And when he will be free, more impressed by the conditions in which he was retained.
Can you describe how he was freed by the police?
Yes, the last days everything goes fastest. As a matter of fact, 3 days before of the release, around 21, it starts to be an agreement about the payment of 100 million pesetas, and it will be done at Geneva, at Switzerland. A strange situation. At that time in Spain, there was it was relatively usual for people with a lot of money take the money to Switzerland, where it was safest than in Spain. So the kidnappers asked for receive the money in Switzerland. So Nicolau Casaus, the vice president of Barcelona, goes to Switzerland to Geneva to prepare with the money for the payment, coordinate with police. Police of Spain, policemen of Switzerland knew about this and all was coordinated. The curious point is that when he arrives to his hotel in Geneva, he installs them and police calls him. We have news. We knows who is the kidnapper who has come here to receive the money. Very well. And this kidnapper is in your very same hotel. So as he later told, when he went to an elevator, when he heard somebody opening a door, he thought, this is the kidnapper. I am in front of him because he didn't know him as well. Who maybe, but well, that was the situation. But that very same day, police advanced investigations also, and they knew he was in Zaragoza, and they found him. The payment was not done because some hours before, police located the Quini where he was hidden. The matter of fact is he was in a parking in a garage for car reparation. Under the floor there was a little room just 4 meters long, with just a very little bed and nothing more. Basically, Kini had not gone out of that in 24 days in a little room without windows under the floor of 8 square meters. The only relaxation was that he had a good relation with the kidnappers. Sometimes on days they even played cards. Had some conversation, and in the last 3 days he had a TV. A TV that's important because if you are lost in a kidnap, but you can see by by television that everybody is expecting that they find you, and this that gives you some hope. And that gives you some hope you'll be released. In the last day, curiously, Spain, the national team was playing in Wembley against England. And Spain had never won at Wembley. At that day, Spain won 1-2. And players dedicated the win to Quini. And right, some hours later, police went into that garage and without violence found 2 kidnappers and Quini and he was released. And the next hours, he was taken to Barcelona, where he was received by thousands of people in the street who wanted to be there to see in person to Quini, who was in a bad shape, with the hair, and was really dirty, and so, but not especially a bad aspect. As a matter of fact, he will need just 10 days to recover and play again. So that was a happy end after a very long situation of 24 days and very, very precarious circumstances.
So let's discuss Barcelona's league form on the field following his freedom. Given his weight loss and all the stress, how long did it take for him to get back in a scoring form?
As a matter of fact, the next match, 3 days after the freedom of Quini, was at Real Madrid, at Santiago Bernabeu. You may believe that the players will be liberated, but no, they were until the stress. When you have passed some situation like this, the next day you are not okay. And Barcelona was defeated 3-0. So it was the definitive goodbye to win the league. League continued for more weeks. Atletico Madrid, who was still in first position, lost it because in a very, very polemical match at home against Zaragoza, where referee allowed the violence of some Zaragoza players, and Atletico Madrid players reacted with more violence and many protests. Two of them were sent off. Atletico Madrid was defeated 1-2, and this led to an end of the competition with Real Sociedad unexpectedly in the first position and Real Madrid in the second. And to a last match when Real Sociedad went to Gijón, needing 1 point to be the champions, just 1 point, and they were for first time ever Spanish champions, but they were losing 2-1 when in the very last minute Jesus Mari Zamora scored the goal that made Real Sociedad champions of this league. It was his very first league, and they couldn't expect it just 1 month ago when they were in the fourth position after Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, and Real Madrid. But they finally won this league in this historical match, Sporting de Gijón 2, Real Sociedad 2, which curiously we have now seen has a referee, the name of who you can know. The referee of that match, decisive match of the league, was Enrique Negreira, the referee that now is in the center of a polemics with Barcelona. For Barcelona is the end of the season. Pity about the league, so yes.
Yes, Sociedad won the title on goal difference. Both Sociedad and Real Madrid were at 45 points. Atletico and Valencia were 42 points, third and fourth, and Barcelona was fifth. So Quini scored his first goals back on April 12th against Almeria in a 5-2 win. But they lost further ground. They lost to Bilbao, and they tied Sevilla for their last match. It was reported that Barcelona manager Elenio Herrera had suggested that Barcelona should replay the 4 matches that Quini was absent. Was there any truth to this?
No, yeah, well, he said it. Elenio Herrera was a very particular man. He's famous for his sentences. He's the author of the sentence, with 10 players, we play better than with 11. When he had a player sent off, he thought it as something good because the team played better, and sometimes it was real. He said one day, his first years in Barcelona, and they go to the field of Betis, and he said to the press, "We will defeat Betis without leaving the bus." Before the start of the match, and everybody said it's a misrespect, it's not acceptable. But Barcelona won 0-6. So he was famous for these sentences in Italy, where he had his biggest success with Inter Milan. He also had this kind. Well, this obviously the matches were not repeated. If they weren't cancelled, how could they be repeated? All the other teams had seen their positions better thanks to absence of Quini. Real Sociedad was now at the top. Atletico Madrid had been, so he could not get this objective. The matches were valid, and Barcelona didn't get any support at any moment by the federation. And Quini at last scored as the top scorer. He scored at Almeria, scored at Sevilla, and finished with 20 goals in a season when he had been kidnapped, and so he won his 4th Pichichi, the trophy of the top scorer. And the next year, he will win in 5th.
Was the Copa del Rey victory at the end of the season, with Quini's scoring form, celebrated even more because of the events before?
Well, yes, Copa del Rey, the last 3 rounds were played after the end of the league. In those years, the Spanish league finished very early, in around 20th of April, very early. And so the month of May was for the Copa del Rey. And Barcelona was impressive. With Schuster, with Simonsen, and with Quini, Barcelona had an impressive play in these 3 rounds, leading to play the final against Sporting de Gijón. That's really curious that Sporting de Gijón, who had never reached the final of the Cup, reached it that year. So the final, Barcelona against the former team of Quini, where he was very beloved. Barcelona won 3-1. Quini scored twice. And in Gijón, some people took it badly. And that was a pity that with that all that happened, and that summer when he went back to Gijón, a few people show him the discomfort because of these goals. But what could they do? He was in Barcelona. He loved the sporting, but he was in Barcelona, and that was the first trophy he get in Barcelona. So he couldn't allow it to go. But it was a nice end for the season. At least winning the cup, the Spanish Copa del Rey was very important on those years, and allowing so Barcelona to play the next year the Cup Winners' Cup, the Recopa, that Barcelona will win in 1982 with a goal of Quini in the final. So that was the first step. The Barcelona won the Copa del Rey. Next year will win the Cup Winners' Cup.
Yeah, in this Copa del Rey run, Quini scored 9 goals the last month for the Copa del Rey. So he had regained his scoring touch. Alfredo Di Stefano was also famously kidnapped in Venezuela in 1963. What were the similarities in that case, and were comparisons made at the time?
That was different because it happened in another country. In 1963, Caracas organized every year the Little World Cup, the Pequeña Copa del Mundo, a friendly trophy with some prestige around the world. So Real Madrid went there to play, but a local group kidnapped. And you must think that Venezuela in 1963 was a democratic country until some point, and very different to now. And some revolutionary group took him. And hardly, I believe it was 3 days until he was released. It was seen here with a lot of worry, obviously, but the distance is different. Di Stefano was the top leader of Real Madrid, what loved everybody, and that finished well without payment also. Also was police who released him. But I don't see a lot of similarities because when you are kidnapped in your own country and you know he's hidden in maybe the house of your neighbor, you don't know where he is, but he should be close to you. It's especially stressing. When it happens in another country, well, you have to trust in the police of that country, and you're very worried also. But well, no, I don't remember there were very comparisons with both cases.
And let's remember that Spain were to host the 1982 World Cup. Were there any policy changes in terms of security at football matches ahead of the 1982 World Cup because of this incident?
World Cup had strong measures of security, but not as far as I remember because of this matter. It was more afraid of the English supporters, who in the 80s were really dangerous wherever they went. They didn't come to Barcelona, but they were in Bilbao and Madrid without incidents. Really, that's no problem. In any case, Spain in those years had a strong political presence. You must think there was the years where there was terrorism in Spain. The Basque nationalist group ETA was killing people in those years, was very active in those years. And they were not during the World Cup, and they never went against football players or something. So another kind. So that the actuation of the police was more oriented to institutions, to politicians, and so. As I remember, footballers continued going without special protection. They were close. They in those years living in districts of the cities, not in suburbs with a big separation of the population. No, they living in the cities, and you could meet them in the street, and they went walking to the stadium. I remember when I personally lived close to Barcelona Stadium, and in my house was living Michelangelo Nadal, the player of Barcelona, who is the uncle of Rafael Nadal, of the tennis player. And I met them in the door, in the street, and we could talk with him. And nowadays it will be different, probably. And they use the players in Spain with their very high salaries, live in houses in the suburbs, with policial protection or private protection, and so. But in those years they were living, and I don't remember an increase of security about this. And it was the feeling that Quini's kidnapping was something exceptional, that nobody thought it could be repeated. And it wasn't, fortunately.
So, for Kinney, how was his immediate post-kidnapping life like, as well as in subsequent years, in terms of his daily life? Maybe he employed extra security or any other measures.
No, as I tell you, he continued the normal life with a very, he was a very with proximity to people, to fans, because he had been always so. And in the sporting field, the next season was very good for him. In 1981-82, he is against the top scorer. He scores against Real Madrid the winner goal in the league. He scores in the final of the Cup Winners' Cup. This is the goal.
Oh,
1982 at Camp
yes.
Nou, Barcelona against Belgian team Standard the Liège. Barcelona. He scores in a clever play the goal when nobody expected. He takes the ball of an opponent and scores. It is so fast that TV didn't record it live because TV was looking on the other side, and it was very very fast, very very quick action. And this year is very good. From 1992, he is 32 years old. He decreases his position in Barcelona. Maradona arrives, and it's curious, they didn't play in the same, but when Maradona arrives to Barcelona, the player who is out of the field is Quini. And they not play in the same position, but the forward players were Marcos, Maradona, and Carrasco. And it will be when Maradona is seriously injured that Quini comes back to the team. So there are 2 years in which Quini doesn't play a lot of matches. He scores in an important win at Real Madrid, 0-2. And in his last season in 83-84, he scored just one goal and played very, very few. So in September 84, he has the tribute because he leaves football. But curiously, he had left football, but Sporting Gijón offers him 33 years old comeback, and he comes back to Gijón, and he will be 4 more seasons there. Not as a regular player, and they start a bit late. The last season he plays very few, but he will be still 4 more seasons at the Sporting de Gijón. In one of them, even getting the fourth position in the league, something very good for the Asturian team. And will leave Sporting at 1987 as an idol, as the most important player of the history of that club.
What reason did Kinney give for not pressing charges nor demanding damages from his kidnappers?
Yes. The trial 1 year later, in 1982, was very, very seen by TV and so a lot of people, because the kidnappers were judged. Kinney didn't accuse them, but the verdict was there, and they were kidnapped and sentenced. Well, when Kinney was there to tell what he lived there, it was really astonishing what he had lived for 24 days in that little hole in the floor. But who was asked, he said he forgave. He was forgiving the captors because, well, maybe syndrome of Stockholm, maybe because he was so good person that hadn't any kind of bad feeling for them. A nice feeling for them. Obviously, they were condemned. I believe there was 10 years, and a lot of years after, even they met something, and he again said he forgave them. Well, the kidnappers were 3 poor boys. The feeling in general was they were not terrorists, they were not professional kidnappers, they were not members of the mafia. They were 3 poor guys who thought that could win a lot of money with this, and later didn't know what to do. And they were cruel because of how they have it, but they were 3 boys who who were not able to do this in good conditions. So Kinney forgave them, and people was not especially hard with them. So they were condemned 10 years, and maybe they they could start a new life. It has not been a feeling of of a strong content about them because it was not neat, and Quini didn't want it to.
Quini is regarded as a legend by the Gijón population. How do Barcelona fans and historians regard him?
Especially in Gijón, he was absolutely beloved. After leaving the fields, he was not going to a coach career, but he was the delegate of the team. The delegate is the person with is in the bench with the coach, but it's for the administrative matters. If you should say something to referee, you should prepare the match, if you should welcome the delegation of the visiting team. So Quini has the role, important role, but something symbolic. So he was every day at El Molinón Stadium when people could see him, at the access of people, of the press. Always with the good words in his lips. Is absolutely candor, absolutely a very good person. It was if you ask him a favor, and was you could do it in a time. He's a player of a time when players in the field were really strong. Spanish football in the 70s is really violent because they use violence to stop the forwards. It was hard, but later the same players had a friendship with them. Danny, the forward of Athletic Bilbao, told when Quini died, told an experience of the 80s. He was expecting at Bilbao that Quini came to lunch, to dinner, but Quini asked that he was 100 kilometers uh, away from Bilbao, and his car has broken, and it was a terrible rain that day and was compromised. But Danny didn't call to something to help from there. No, he take his own car and went 100 kilometers under the rain, looking for Quini because they were friends of the players of that time. And this friendship maintained for many years, these players of the 70s and 80s, and Quini was the best example of that. So, and also in Barcelona, where he maintained some links. Also, he was very beloved because for my generation, he was remembered as the forward player, the scorer of that Barcelona who reached not many trophies because they didn't reach many trophies, but was lovely to see and have very spectacular players. Quini was the nicest of them. There was Schuster, it was Maradona, but they were always distant. Quini was of the stars of Barcelona, the close to you, the one you can identify better. You didn't identify with Maradona. You can identify with this guy of Asturias who was always with a smile with you. That was Quini.
How were the final years of his life?
He was very loved, but he was not very lucky in the last years. To start with, I tell you the history of his brother. Quini is the son of a former football player, and they are three brothers, all three of them playing football. One of them will not go very far, but is still working on Sporting de Gijón. His name Falo. Enrique Castro Quini, as you know, will die later. I tell now. But the other brother, had a worse history. He was the goalkeeper of Sporting. The same day that Quini goes to Sporting, goes his brother. He's a goalkeeper. He's a good goalkeeper and will be always at the Sporting, as he remembered, a goalkeeper of the history of Sporting with the name of Castro, his surname. He was retired in the 80s as Quini, and in 1993, the tragedy arrives to the family. They are in the beach of Pichon in Cantabria, a beach. It's in a summer day, and two English kids are swimming in the water of the sea. But for some problem, I don't remember, they are close to die there. There's some problems, and the water in Cantabric Sea can happen. They're a serious problem, very serious problem. And this Castro, the brother of Quini, who goes to help them and save them. Both kids are saved, but he dies. He dies in the rescue. And there is a lot of tributes have been done there at Gijón because of the fact. So around the 42 years old, his brother dies as a hero, but dies, and that's terrible. And that was very, very lamentable in those times. Well, life continues with Quini. Quini working in Sporting Gijón, and around 2000 he's diagnosed with cancer. But he will survive this cancer. It's known that he has this problem of health, but will be finally a health problem. That's curious and that's tragic also. in 2018, he has two heart attacks. The second of them happened in the street in Gijón. He falls floor in the street in Gijón. Everybody seeing it, everybody wanting to help. Ambulances come, but it was fatal, and he died at 69 years old. Yes, at 69 years old happens his death. Terrible. Well, the goodbye for all the supporters was amazing in the Stadium El Molinón. That was made the ceremony. Thousands and thousands of people, players of Sporting, players of Barcelona, players of the Spanish national team, and they all there to very, very, very nice tribute to him 5 years ago.
Yeah, for a new football fan like myself in the early 80s, back then I was not aware of this kidnapping, but obviously Quini's name was always in the news when discussing Spanish football. He was always considered the top Spanish forward of this era. So this is sad episode in history of a player and a club, this 1981 kidnapping. And obviously it's open to speculation whether Barcelona would have won the league title or not, but we'll never know. With that, I would like to thank you for this interview. I would urge everyone to read the main blog article as well for more detail and photographs. And the link is included in the video upload description along with our respective contact information. So, Carles, thank you again.
Thank you. I remember Quini was a local hero because he scores a lot of goals, but he's more remembered not only by his 200 goals, but his character. He was really beloved for everybody and everything said. He was absolutely kindly, absolutely lovely, and even his rivals recognized it. And just a few players have been remembered for this in the Spain's. It has a lot of merit of him. And not only Barcelona, not only Gijón, in all Spain, they remember him for his goal, but especially for his personality. And that's the best thing you can say about somebody.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.